Good morning, YouTube. This is Kelsey from Kels Reads Things, also known as Librarians Recommend. I hope everyone is having a wonderful Friday today. I myself am also having a good Friday because I get to talk to you about one of my favorite things today, books. Today I'm going to be discussing Echo North by Joanna Ruth Mayer. Now, this is a young adult retelling of the Norwegian fairy tale East of the Sun, West of the Moon. It's also a retelling of the French story of Beauty and the Beast, and also a retelling of the Scottish tale Tamlin. Okay, so to give you just a little bit of background information and basic synopsis of the book, Echo North is about a young woman named Echo. She is 17 years old and she is unfortunately ostracized by her community due to some scarring on her face. She was attacked by a wolf when she was a 7-year-old child, and because of that she has been looked down on and rejected by her community ever since. Now, the book is in Echo's perspective. It's first person, so I really like books like that because I feel like you get to know the character more. You get to see their world, their inner world a little more, and Echo does a beautiful job of painting this tapestry of her life. She is very close to her father. However, in the book, about 50 pages in or so, he has gone missing. He went to a neighboring town to try and sell some of his precious books and maps in order to keep their family afloat. She also has an evil stepmother in this book, and that's what drives him to have to sell all of his own precious items because this woman has spent all of their money, basically. And he has actually been missing for 6 months by the time the plot really picks up. But Echo discovers him one winter evening. He's nearly frozen to death. And when she thinks all is lost, the wolf who attacked her early in her childhood appears and speaks to her and promises that if she chooses to live for him for 1 calendar year in his home, he will spare her father's life. Feeling as though she has no other choice, Echo agrees, and she travels with him to his home under the mountain. Now, this home is actually magical. It has several different rooms. If you ask the house for something, it will give it to you immediately, and it is up to the wolf and Echo to keep the rooms from unraveling. They have to physically sew the rooms together, which I thought was a really interesting spin on fantasy. It reminded me, the house specifically reminded me a lot of Howl's Moving Castle. That's a beautiful anime film. I recommend it, especially if you're interested in whimsical fantasy and romance all in one. So by the time Echo gets there, she's informed by the wolf that for the year that she's going to be staying with him, the house is falling apart, and at the end of the year, the house and he both will die. But until then, she is there to help him keep the house afloat and keep it sewn together and mended and to make sure it doesn't unravel. And throughout her experiences, Echo runs into this mirror library. It's like an actual library, except for all of the books are mirrors, and you can enter into the world, and you can either choose to follow the storyline, which never changes, or she has the option to kind of wander off into the world, kind of like an RPG game, but in real life. And along the way, Echo meets 2 other characters, Hal, who she ends up falling in love with, and Mokosh, whose identity isn't really revealed until later on, and Mokosh is a female friend. She becomes a female friend. Okay. So by the end of the book, Echo has to kind of make a decision about whether or not saving one of the characters is worthwhile, because that character makes, in my opinion, a really awful decision. They should have informed Echo of some things. They were very deceitful. They withheld information from her, and that was a major reason why I gave this book 3.5 stars out of 5 rather than what I was originally planning on giving it at 4.5. So now I'm going to discuss with you some things that I really enjoyed about the book. First and foremost, Echo is an incredible, strong woman. She's also kind and caring and just someone that I would personally want to be friends with, especially because she understands the sting of rejection, and that's reflected throughout the entire book. She's also very much passionate about music, and I usually love characters that are passionate about the arts. So, and she also makes exceptions for people and is very, very forgiving. So, I'll touch on that a little bit later. Another thing that I absolutely loved about the book was the way it was written. Joanna Ruth Mayer did a wonderful job of translating these, classic fairy tales into a more modern retelling while also keeping the flow, the pacing, and the way that it's written just fantastic, just on par with some of the greats, really. It was very beautifully written. I finished this 300 plus novel within 3 days, if that tells you anything. So I was actually really sad to have to give it a 3.5 rating, but of course I will dive on some things that I didn't like a little bit later. Another thing I really enjoyed was it was a really unique spin on fantasy and romance in general. I haven't really read anything like it before, except for maybe a couple of her books, which I will mention. I'm going to go ahead and do that now. A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas is another similar storyline to Echo North. It is also a Norwegian retelling of East of the Sun, West of the Moon, Beauty and the Beast, and Tamlin. However, I personally think that Sarah J. Maas did the retelling better justice. That's just me. It is also one of the most read series in new adult, which is a term that's kind of in between young adult and adult fiction. So if you're interested in fairy tale retellings, I really recommend the A Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J. Maas. I also recommend East by Edith Pateau and Beauty by Robin McKinley. And it's actually interesting, Joanna Ruth Mayer used East by Edith Pateau and Beauty by Robin McKinley to kind of influence this novel specifically. And I can really tell because I read East back when I was a teenager myself, and I definitely saw some similarities reflected. Okay, now I'm going to discuss some things that I wasn't as crazy about. Most of the male characters in this book did not impress me. The father is very, very kind and gentle as Echo is. However, he marries this evil, that's the best way I can describe her, evil woman who is just spiteful and shallow and treats Echo just very, very poorly. And he doesn't really do anything about it. He never puts his foot down. He never says, "You won't speak to my daughter that way." And she treats Echo just as poorly as the villagers do. So I really would have liked to have seen the father step up and say, "Okay, enough is enough." But that never happens. Another male character that I was not pleased with is the love interest for Echo. I don't want to give too much away, but he makes some decisions that I did not agree with. I felt like he was very deceitful. He withheld a lot of information from Echo, and one major decision that he made really, really affected her life, her entire existence, and his. And I personally feel like there could have been a different solution. However, that's just me. I also felt like Echo forgave him much too easily, and they went on to live happily ever after, which can be great. But at the same time, I feel like that doesn't give the best message about love or a healthy relationship. That's just me. I personally do try to seek out romance books that do have healthy themes about how someone should treat you and the level of respect that they should give you. But that's just me. Another thing that I wasn't as crazy about is some of the minor characters. I understand they're minor, but they were pretty two-dimensional. And we also never find out what happens to Mokosh. Her story just kind of ends, and we never learn what happens to her. So these were just some of the things that I wasn't as crazy about, and that's why I had to give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars rather than what I thought my original rating would be of 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, well, that's all I have today for Echo North. Again, it was a great retelling. However, there were just certain decisions that the author made that I didn't agree with. Now I am reading a adult romance comedy called Would Like to Meet by Rachel Winters. I'm about a third of the way through, and I'll be giving a full video review on that next Friday. So far, it includes hilarious banter, wonderful friends, and a very cute main character, as well as great secondary characters. So that's something that I'm actually really excited to be discussing with you next week. Alrighty, guys. Well, until then, keep reading. Let me know what you're reading. Let me know what you recommend, and maybe I'll get the chance to read it and discuss it in one of my videos. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a fantastic Friday.